What's going on, gardeners? It is Sunday, March 20th, and it is a beautiful spring day here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Spring is officially here, and I'm so excited to be making this video today because I want to share with all of you every single project, improvement, expansion, and addition I intend to make to my garden this year. And who knows, maybe some of these projects that I'm taking on will inspire you as well. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. The first thing that I am focusing on this year is to eliminate the weed pressure in my garden and thereby the pest pressure. Here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, our insect pressure is off the charts. My garden gets brutalized by all types of insects in the heat of the summer. So I need to keep the weed pressure as low as possible because insects love laying eggs and breeding in weeds. And the more weeds I can get rid of, the lower my insect pressure will naturally be. Now last year I ran drip irrigation all throughout my garden, and I will link to that video above because I made a very detailed instructional video on how to install drip irrigation to raised beds. And what I did was I placed my drip irrigation lines around the perimeter of my garden, and that was a problem for me because it was sitting on bare dirt and they became just covered in weeds. So throughout the course of the year, all around the perimeter of my garden, they were full of awful weeds that got really tall, and it was really hard to reach in here and get to, especially with my garden fence. So it was hard to weed that area. Well, this winter, I spent a lot of time actually removing all of those weeds, and I placed several inches of cypress mulch all throughout my garden to snuff out the weeds, and now I won't have any more weed pressure along the perimeter of my garden. That is going to go a big way to having lower pest pressure come the heat of the summer. The next thing I'm doing is I'm changing out my old hinged hoop house design that used to be on this raised bed right here that you can see behind me, and I'm going to switch it over to this retractable hoop house design using agricultural fabric. What I found after using the hinged hoop house was that the greenhouse plastic just doesn't work in my climate. It doesn't keep it warm enough in the winter to keep growing frost tolerant plants in there, but it gets way too hot during the day, even in the winter, and definitely in the spring, summer, and fall. So I'm not really able to get much season extension with the greenhouse plastic. The fabric design, on the other hand, does great for pest control, which is really my main problem in the summer. So it really goes a long way to help my garden be more pest resistant in the heat of the summer, which is my bigger problem during my growing season. So I removed that old hinged hoop house cover. I'm salvaging it for parts, and I'm going to rebuild this bed right here to be another retractable hoop house, of which a video I will link to above if you're interested in how to make it. So I will be putting my determinate tomatoes in that retractable hoop house, and my peppers will be going in this retractable hoop house that will be here. So I will have 2 tomato and pepper beds that should be fairly pest free. With this agricultural fabric, I will be able to have really nice barriers to keep the insects off of my tomatoes and peppers, which is a huge problem here where I live. Now, while those retractable hoop houses will protect my smaller plants, they're not going to do anything for my larger plants like my indeterminate tomatoes, cucumbers, and other vining plants that I grow up my trellis. So I had another idea. I bought 100-foot rolls of 72-inch screen, like screened-in porch fiberglass screen, and I'm going to screen in the walls of my garden. So as you can see, these will be large enough to mostly screen in my entire garden. I think that will, by leaps and bounds, help decrease my pest pressure. These screen rolls were so unbelievably cheap, I could not afford not to buy them, and I will have them linked in my Amazon storefront in the video description. You will not believe the price. Then on the inside, I will be draping this insect netting on top of my indeterminate tomatoes, cucumbers, and other vining crops, so they will be protected from pests that do happen to get into the garden. Now, some of you may be saying, if I put up all this screen, what am I going to do about pollinators? I'm not going to have pollination for my plants. Well, I think I have an answer to that. Number one, much of what you grow in your vegetable garden, they don't require pollination by pollinators. Things like your greens, things like your tomatoes, they're self-fertile and they're wind-pollinated. And then other varieties, I try to grow parthenocarpic varieties like my cucumbers and squash that can set fruit without pollination. However, you will still need pollination by insects to some degree, and I have a theory about that. What I've noticed is that most of the annoying bad pests in my garden, they're things like beetles, they're things like leaf hoppers, and they don't fly very high or they just hop. So if I have a 6-foot tall barrier on the edge of my garden, I personally believe that will mostly be keeping out the beetles and the leaf hoppers and other awful low-flying creatures, whereas the bees and the dragonflies that occupy the higher levels of the sky, they will be able to fly right over no problem and get in my garden. So I think that the majority of the insects that I will be keeping out will be the bad type, whereas the pollinating flying types won't have much of a problem getting into my garden. So screening in this garden will be one of my big projects this spring, and I will make sure to document it all so you know how I did it, and maybe you'll be able to do it for your garden as well. The next thing I'll be doing is overhauling my container garden area. Now, typically what I've always done is I've placed my containers with fairly aggressive spacing, and then I've pounded 4-foot tall 3/8-inch rebar into the ground and then tied all of the individual containers to that. And that's just, it's not only damaging to the weed barrier and expensive to buy all of these, but it's kind of dangerous for my dog and it doesn't look really good, and it makes everything have pretty aggressive spacing and take up a ton of room. So what I'm going to be doing is I will be running a cable trellis system, and I will be securing all of my container grown trees to that cable trellis system, and I will make absolute sure to document all of that for you. The next thing I'll be doing is I will be restoring some of my weed barrier here. The way I hold this down normally is I drive these 6-inch garden staples into the ground. The problem is on windy days, it usually rips up the weed barrier. So I found gasketed garden staples that will stop that issue. So once I get them in stock, I will show you how I'm going to reinstall my weed barrier using them, and that should help fix the weed problem permanently. And finally, I will be adding drip irrigation to my container garden. I wanted to do this last year, but I didn't get time to do it. I will be adding on to my how to build DIY drip irrigation playlist with a full tutorial when the time comes on installing drip irrigation to a container garden. The next thing I'll be doing is adding 3 new types of fruit trees to my garden. I have 2 apples on order that are great pollinators for each other. I have a self-fertile peach, and I also have an Asian pear, and I will be planting them all most likely up against this portion of my fence right here. So they will abut right next to my non-astringent persimmon and my 2 pawpaw trees. So I will have a very unique, awesome diversity of plants growing right here. Now, I will be growing these all espalier because I want them to have close, pretty aggressive spacing, because I like planting high density in my backyard. So I will be sure over the years show you how to espalier these fruit trees. Now, the Asian pear variety that I wanted is not self-fertile. Most Asian pears are not, and I didn't want to put in 2 Asian pear trees because that's really more than I need. So I also ordered scion wood for a couple other types in the same order, and I will be grafting that wood onto this Asian pear to have a multi-grafted variety. And once again, I will be sure to show you how I'm going to graft based on the tree that I get. My goal is to graft the Asian pear so it is a multi-tiered espalier where each individual tier is its own unique variety. So I will be very sure to document all of that when the time comes, and I'm really excited about doing this one. Just like every year, I will be making a few new fig tree selections. A couple will be going in ground, and a couple will be going in my favorite number 15 black nursery containers that I have chosen that I think are not quite good enough to go in ground, but I definitely want to still keep them. Now, I'm running out of room for fig trees because I really want a diversity of other types of fruit, so I'm going to be very selective from now on. So there's only going to be a couple that are going to make the cut, but when the time comes, I will make sure to reveal them. Another thing I will be doing, and I can't wait to do this, is to tear down this awful cold composting pile that never really turned out to be very productive for me. It just winds up being a magnet for weeds, and then I get a lot of pest pressure out of here, like mosquitoes and beetles, because they all breed in these weeds. So I will be ripping these out. These T-posts will be repurposed for that container garden area that I was talking about earlier, and I intend to eventually get rid of this whole area in general and replace it with a cattle panel arbor trellis for vertical gardening. Back in the winter, I took you on a journey where I rented a U-Haul to buy all of this cattle panel and pressure-treated wood to make the new raised bed overhead gardening trellis arbor system that I have in the back of my mind that I really, really want to construct. I haven't had the time of day to do it yet. It will happen at some point. It's probably not going to happen in the spring. I really wanted to have it up and running by now, but there's just too much to do and not enough time to do it. It will be a long-term project. I hope to get it done this year, but it may not get done until the fall or something like that, once I get enough areas cleaned up and I get all of my priority plants in ground first. However, once the time comes to build this, I will make sure to document the build in a DIY style fashion so everybody else can build something similar as well, and when it does get done, I just know it's going to be awesome. And my final big goal of the year is to complete the sunroom behind me and get it ready for a winter garden. This sunroom has been a year-long project. It's been absolute torture getting everything done with the labor and material shortages that has been the past year of our lives. But it's finally almost done. The electrics is half done. We have to finish the flooring, and then we have to get furniture, and it's pretty much going to be a done deal. As usual, I'm going to try and push the limits of this sunroom, and I'm going to see exactly what I can keep growing all winter long. Can I grow things like tomatoes? Can I grow things like peppers? How about cucumbers? How about zucchini? I'm going to try various bush-style varieties of plants. I'm going to see exactly what I can keep growing throughout the winter. So that's going to be a really fun, exciting experiment that's going to carry us all the way into the new year. Does it seem like a big list of things to do? Yes, absolutely, but it's important to dream big. Always dream big, and don't worry about the naysayers. Don't waste your big dreams on small mines. There's a reason why I'm shooting high. I'm shooting high because if I miss and I don't get everything done, I will still get a ton done at the end of the day. Shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you will land among the stars. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video exciting, helpful, and fun. If you did, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. Everything that I listed in this garden, I will be documenting on film. So make sure you stay subscribed and stay notified so you get these notifications when we post these videos. If you're curious about all of the products I mentioned in this video and all of the awesome deals I just scored, I will make sure to link them all in the video description and my Amazon storefront link. While you're there, check out my Spreadshop link for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and we hope to see all of you again on the next video.
Dale is being very vocal and impatient with his hungries this morning. Don't you growl and groan at me. I know you're hungry. We're going to get your food right now. Okay? You ready for breakfast? Okay. All right. We're getting your breakfast. All right, buddy. We're all out of the chicken, rice, and kale and carrots. So now it's back to plain old boring dry food. Hey, don't be impatient. Okay, Dale. Good boy. Such a good one. We got ourselves a good one here.